Welcome to today's HR2go session presented by the Personio Foundation. So I'm Elizabeth. Nice to meet you all or see you again here. I'm program manager at the Personio Foundation. And HR2go is all about delivering practical, bite-sized insights for HR professionals in the nonprofit sector. So because we know your time is valuable and your challenges here are unique, so we want to deliver practical insights in the most efficient time. Today, we're diving into the topic of getting probation period right and setting new journers up for success. So the probation period is often seen as a test run for new hires, but actually it's an opportunity and also an opportunity to set employees up for success, to reinforce organizational values and build strong foundation for long-term retention. But how do we get it right? What makes a probation period successful rather than stressful? And what are common pitfalls HR can avoid? So if you have any specific comments or questions, please feel free to use the Zoom chat as well, or please keep them or keep asking us afterwards as well if you have questions. And to help us answer questions, I'm excited to welcome our expert guest today. That's Kayla, our Principal Performance and Talent Development Partner at Personio. Cool. So Kayla has a deep experience in talent development, employee engagement, and creating HR strategies that actually work in practice. So she's here today, and thank you for your time to share actionable takeaways to bring back at your own organization. Welcome, Kayla.
You. Happy to be here.
Great. So I stop share the screen that we can all see you. Maybe first question to dive in. So if you look back to your first jobs or your career, or were there ever a time in your career when you thought about quitting during a probation period, and maybe what happened or what did you take away from that experience?
Sure, happy to share. So right out of college, I had majored in finance and I joined a role that worked on the US stock market. And right away, I kind of realized I wasn't a fit. Everything I had learned in school just wasn't tracking in practice. And I thought to myself, the probation period, I have to get through. If I don't make it, I consider myself a failure. Kind of all of this negative language around the probation period and having it just be really a crucial point in your career. And I toughed it out. I worked through it and ended up leaving the organization not too long after the probation period. And as I started to kind of navigate other jobs, I realized this kind of negative stigma around the probation period. It's kind of in our head in the sense of, as you said, the probation period is intended to be an opportunity for both sides to really reflect on, is this the right fit? So from the organization standpoint, they get to see in practice, or everything you shared in the 3 to 5 interviews that we had, is that actually playing out and working in our organization? And then from the employee standpoint, you get to see, is everything that I was sold on in the interview process actually materializing in the right way? So yes, I think, it's a very healthy, normal thing to either not make it through a probation or ultimately decide this isn't the right fit, because that's what the period is for. And it really is that mutual opportunity for both sides to really assess the mutual fit and then hopefully either have a long, flourishing relationship together, or you can part ways earlier and find something that is a better fit with your long-term goals.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing so honestly about these challenges as well in your career. All right, so maybe let's start also with the foundation. So a lot of organizations have a probation period, but not all of them actually structure it in a way that sets everybody up for success. From your experience in different HR positions and organizations, what are key elements that make a probation period truly effective?
I think first, having goals set for an employee is key. When an employee joins an organization, everything is going to feel new and overwhelming, and a lot of information is being thrown at you, projects are being thrown at you, and it can be very difficult to time manage and prioritize. So the greatest gift that a manager can give to an employee is just sitting down and explaining what they should really be focused on in their first couple of months, how that ties into the organization's goals, the department's goals, so that they can see their the direct impact that they're going to be having. And it just anchors them back to something in conversations and feedback so that an employee and a manager can be talking about the same thing and just really have clear expectations. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is ongoing feedback is key. As I said, being new to an organization, ways of working is going to be different, expectations are going to be different, and a lot of this you're navigating very ambiguously. There's no roadmap, and so the best thing others and managers can do for a new joiner is really just to help them understand what are the good things that they're doing. There's going to be a lot of those. There's going to be many wins in the first couple months, so just reinforcing those behaviors. And then also if things aren't going exactly as planned or going off course, an employee might not have that self-awareness yet. So getting that ongoing feedback from different channels to help them navigate back and ultimately execute should be the end goal. So I think goal setting and ongoing feedback are going to be those two core components you want to get right in order to have a successful probation.
Yeah. Would you also say there are key meetings during the probation period, or is it more like the end of the probation and then everything is going to be like a go or no go?
Recommendation here is just to always have kind of weekly one-on-ones. Over time, these can, of course, be spaced out, but just given everything is new, as I said, it's important to at least have weekly check-ins. I would also recommend an employee having a buddy. So this is usually chosen by the manager so that the employee has an outlet to ask questions, get support when the manager is busy, and just have somebody available to help them transition into the company. And on top of kind of the weekly cadence or the ad hoc cadence with a buddy, I would also recommend setting up a midpoint check-in. We've seen a lot of success with this at Personio. This is right around the midpoint, so 3 months in, if you have a 6-month probation period. And this just allows a bit more structure so that an employee can kind of self-reflect, write down, reflect on what were the main accomplishments that I've done in the past couple of months, and then from that, what have I learned and how am I gonna change my behaviors or keep building on this momentum for the next couple months? And then on the flip side, the manager is able to also have that same reflection to then think about, okay, how has this person delivered for the organization? And then where do I need them to continue to grow in order to make this a successful relationship long term? And I think in this conversation, it just then allows managers and employees to have a really honest dialogue about, the good, the constructive, all of it, in a more formalized setting. And then, of course, as a part of this, you should encourage peer feedback as well to get all sorts of perspectives in the mix so that managers and employees can have that whole picture, talk about it, and then have really targeted kind of development actions or next steps from that feedback.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. When I look back at my like few probation periods I went through, like this midpoint always helped me to reassure, okay, is it the right way or not? Like I think the transparency there in that sense is also key to give like the direction for it.
Definitely.
Great. And I mean, we said it already, starting a new job can be nerve-wracking, and yeah, managers can also feel under pressure there. So if especially when things are not going as smoothly. So how can you an HR position help manage these emotional sides of probation for like both new employees and their teams? So I mean, you talked about a lot about managers getting it right, and but how can you in HR help enable these managers?
Yeah, so I think manager training in general is always a good idea, kind of what the probation period is intended for, what your role is. I think in a lot of organizations, there's differing experience levels with probation. So just setting that baseline for managers so that they know, okay, what's expected of me? Okay, at the 3-month check-in, here's how I prepare to get the most out of the conversation with my employee and support them, inform the manager about development opportunities so that they know what they can tap into for their employee to help them grow and succeed. And I think also just reinforcing to managers this idea of ongoing feedback, it is going to be their best friend, essentially. I mean, we oftentimes start a new job feeling very on edge. You want to do your best, you want to impress everyone, and you're worried about making the smallest mistake, and you kind of in your mind make it bigger than it is. And so I think just managers being able to give employees that confidence and reassurance so that they are put into an environment where they can do their best work is going to do really good things for the team. So the more training and preparation you can give to managers before their new joiner starts, I think the more successful the probation period would be. And I also think it's important that, as I said, with that buddy system, that the buddy's also checking in on the employee as well. And there can also be buddy program training, the same idea where they're provided with resources to make sure that they're transitioning the employee into the organization effectively as well. So it's just as much on the team members and the manager as it is on the employee to make it through the probation period.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for like stressing that out again. And I think also in regards to resources like templates, like feedback templates or even invite templates, things like that, it's something that yeah, we in the HR space can provide. Quick disclaimer here, if you need some resources, we also have some in the HR Accelerator, so you can tap into that as well. Cool. So, I mean, we talked about goal setting and maybe also often it's important to have a look at the performance, but sometimes probation also focuses too much on tasks and not enough on the values, in my experience. So how can HR also ensure that that period is a time to reinforce culture and values of the organization, which is in particular in the nonprofit sector, I think super important.
Yeah, culture and values is so key because a lot of times that's why the employee joined the organization in the first place. So again, just to use Personio as an example, we embed our values into the first day onboarding that employees go through so that they, from day one, understand our ways of working, how we operate, and kind of expectations and behavioral norms within the company. And then we intentionally keep that threaded throughout their 6-month journey through their probation period. And when we do that midpoint check-in, we have specific questions related to our values so that an employee can start to put the dots together about how their direct work ties back to our values so they can see that link and connection. Managers also are asked to reflect on our values as well and how the employee is performing, which values they're embodying the most, the positive impact that's having, what values they might want to focus on or put more effort into moving forward. So again, there can just be a very honest, direct dialogue around the value component. And then also in our performance evaluations as well, it's always rooted in the values because ultimately this is who we are as an organization. And if we don't have everyone in lockstep on that idea or concept, then we can only go so far. So for us, the values and culture component are so key to, again, that mutual dynamic that the employee sees themselves fitting into it because it's so important. And then the company or the organization also sees them thriving in that space as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like also connecting the dots to the values and give enough space in the first few days to reinforce the values or even after the mid probation, because I think the more you hear it, the better you're aligned and can really thrive the impact there. Yeah, great. Now we talked all about like setting it up for success. But it could be a tough moment as well at the end of the probation after 3 or 6 months, depending always on the length. So sometimes it's a clear cut, but sometimes there's also like a gray area. And what, from your experience, is the best way for HR and also managers to make that final decision in a fair and really structured way?
It's a really great question. I think one of the biggest mistakes organizations can make is just kind of having the decision without there being a clear kind of roadmap on how you got there. And I don't want to keep doubling down on feedback, but I think this is also going to be your greatest lever for helping to build self-awareness for the employee of yes, you're on track or no, you're not. Because if they're not getting that feedback, they're not going to know what they need to change. And at the end of 3 months, 6 months, whatever your probation period is, they're going to sit there shrugging their shoulders like, I didn't get any indication that I wasn't performing. So just being able to create that space and checkpoints to deliver that feedback is going to be incredibly helpful. And then I think ultimately we all have a gut feeling of whether or not something is going to work out or not. I think if during the probation, if you as a manager are already getting this feeling of this isn't really materializing in the way that I was sold in the interview, that shouldn't be ignored. Ultimately, if this is how you're feeling in the first couple months when somebody should be putting their best foot forward and kind of operating at their best, these behaviors are probably going to continue on well after probation and could potentially have a negative impact on the wider team. So I think it is important to trust your gut, but again, you can't just feel it. You have to communicate that, and you have to communicate examples to the employee as to why. I also think it's really important to make sure that you're not letting yourself be biased. So, again, collecting that full lens from other colleagues, other team members, perhaps the buddy if you've created a buddy program. So that way you're getting multiple perspectives to kind of reinforce either what you're feeling or kind of what you're hearing. Because if across the board everyone is having the same sentiments that, this person isn't aligned to our values or our culture, that can't be ignored. And again, this is very tangible examples you can then share back with the employees so that they're not surprised or caught off guard, but that you bring them along on your decision-making process versus at the end just kind of saying, okay, we're going to part ways. And then also, again, that midpoint probation is a really nice step to be able to at least give an indicator of how the employee is tracking so that they do have a couple months' time to be able to course correct. If they're really passionate about the job and feel that they're a fit, they just maybe didn't know the ways of working or got off on the wrong foot, they still do have a window then to kind of prove to the manager and the team, I am cut out for this, I can do it. But then you do give them the luxury of time to be able to change their ways rather than again just at the end saying you know that's the end of probation.
Yeah, definitely. For what I always also hear or experience myself was also that HR or a people partner or HR manager always checked in with the manager as well of the employee, like on a bi-monthly basis. For example, how's the probation like actually going? How's the performance? To double check there and have then also kind of the feedback and evidence like how somebody is performing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely. What is your personal opinion? Maybe last question from my side, about like a traffic light system during the mid probation or also during the whole probation period process?
I'm a fan of the traffic light. Again, I think the more indicators you can give to a team member about how they're tracking is only going to help that confidence piece and make them feel reassured. As I said, we're all kind of navigating this and trying to figure out, did I do the right things in that meeting, or did I talk to this person the right way? So the more you can emphasize in what settings someone is doing something right, so they continue to build momentum around that, the better for your organization. So the traffic light or just any kind of yes, no indicator that you can give an employee. Obviously, things can change over time, so you're not locked into this traffic light or kind of yes, no indicator, but at least it gives the employee peace of mind so that they can kind of navigate that 6-month journey with a bit more ease.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks so much. If there are any questions, please feel free to reach out afterwards to myself or also to Kayla. So yeah, thank you so much. Before we wrap up, maybe one piece of advice you'd give to HR professionals in the nonprofit sector about probation period, what would it be? So really just the key thing.
It's a very good question. I think ensuring that you have a fair structure in place that is consistently practiced is the best thing you can do. Just from the fairness standpoint, employees all feel they're entering the organization at the same place, they're getting the same cadence of feedback, they're getting evaluated the same way, and they have the same chance as everybody else to pass probation. And being very transparent about that process would also be a recommendation so that everyone knows what they're walking into, managers know expectations, employees know how their first 6 months are going to look so that there's no surprises and that there's just transparency all the way.
Great. Awesome. Thanks so much. So to everyone listening, I hope you picked up some practical takeaways for your own organization and found it valuable. Please share your feedback if you have some, or share then the recording afterwards with fellow HR professionals. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time.